Sunday morning going into Thanksgiving week, and the record breaking lake effect snow will run its course today before it begins to relax. It's relaxed in some places, not in others. Thanksgiving week, we have the weather outlook for the entire week. We'll take a look at the long range and everything else that we'd like to talk about here on Sunday morning. Where else but on the Joe and Joe Weather Show? Brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area. And with these big lake effect snows going on, not that we'd ever see those kind of mega amounts in the east, the coastal east. At least we hope not. But it's a good time to make sure that you've got what you need to make sure your home and business are free and clear of snow and ice this coming winter with rock salt and all the snow and ice melt products that are out there, including Pelledo and Mag ice pellets and flakes. And of course, you might need a beautiful new snowblower and flashlights, generators, all the rest of it. They're all there at Omni, 631-756-1125. Nowhere could you find better prices. And the website is...
It is OmniTrueValue.com. And by the way, I think that's a very classy looking snowblower. Brilliant or bright orange color.
Isn't
Makes
it
stand out against that blanket of white that you're attempting to clear away. So there you go.
I have to tell you, I don't know how you've been viewing all of this over the last 4 days or so. I have had a really tough time, I think, wrapping my head around the fact that I had to deal with that Long Island snowmageddon back in 2013 and I had this huge Troy build. I mean, it was monstrous, and it was tough. And then I started thinking, you know what? If it was twice as much or even 3 times as much, how in the name of God would I have handled it? I just can't seem to wrap my head around the idea that there could be snow over your past your front door, and maybe in some cases reaching a rooftop. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me.
And the thing is that I saw in one of the reports yesterday that, and this does make sense, is that the snow in question is not a puffy, powdery type of a low-density snow that's blown around by the wind. Many people were commenting that this was a heavy, wet snow, the kind of along the lines of, wet concrete or something. And that's why we saw, for example, a building, the roof collapsed. So this is not just a regular type of snow. This is probably a snow that, we talk about, 10-to-1 ratio. This is probably more like a 6 or 8-to-1 type ratio type snow. And that is making it doubly difficult to try to clear away. So it is absolutely incredible. Now, I also saw yesterday, and I got rather angry watching a report. I think it was on NBC Evening News last night, where they finished a report about the snow from some guy who looked like he was in his late 60s or 70s. Well, I've been here all my life, and I've never seen anything like this before. And I said, really? So in other words, you forgot about 2014, you forgot about 2000 and 1977, which I'm sure were very, very good comparisons to what is happening right now. So they're making it, and the news people are making it sound like, again, it is snowmageddon in a way, but it's making it sound like it's never happened before or never happened to this extreme before in Buffalo. And we know that it has.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know. It's just the way that.
The only thing I would say to that is that with lake effect, we know that there are some places get hammered. You drive a few miles either side of that, and you could wind up with next to nothing. Then you drive a few more miles, and you get into another band. So I suppose you could say that the person they spoke to, maybe at his location, he didn't get quite the kinds of snow that they got in those other lake effect events. But that doesn't take away from the fact that these things have happened from time to time. And they have been, some of them have been extreme. This one seems to have taken it to maybe a slightly higher level than that. Somebody was asking me too, Joe, how are they measuring this? Because frankly, once you get beyond the yardstick, it becomes a little bit tough trying to figure out numbers above 36. So if you got a tape measure that you can, that's firm enough, okay, maybe you could do that, but you have to be sort of on top of where the snow is in order to stick that tape measure down. So how they're measuring this, and I'm guessing that they're using where official numbers are coming out anyway. They're using snowboards where they wipe the snow off every 6 hours and just kind of keep counting uh, how much snow falls in those 6 hour periods or the 3 hour periods or whatever time frame they're
Right,
using.
right.
I think it's 6 hours, and then just adding it together because that snow does tend to compress, so you can't, it's you're going to lose some depth to it. But look, these are big numbers here. I mean, we're talking about 6 feet plus in a lot of spots, and the only other thing I would add to that is for the snow lovers that watch this show that are not in Western New York or and let's not forget North Central New York, north of Syracuse, up I-81,
Right.
Pulaski, Watertown. Watertown got 55 inches from one of the reports that I saw. And they're getting more today. So the bands are setting up across Lake Ontario into Pulaski and I know it's supposed to be Pulaski and points north there. So there's North Central New York too is also getting hit pretty hard. Southwestern New York has gotten hit a bit harder. Northeast Ohio, Cleveland, eastward, Cleveland's forecasting to get half a foot today. So the Browns couldn't have played maybe. Well, they could have played at home, I suppose. 6 inches is not a big deal, but they're going to be playing at Detroit. But it's just been a weird. And I think one of the other events happened in November also. I think in
Um,
2014.
right, 2014. In fact, I posted something on Facebook yesterday, mentioning that yesterday was 8 years to the day that they had that other massive snowfall that we spoke about in 2014. And of course, they were also talk about a major snowfall in Buffalo in 2000 that they were actually in the initial, when we started talking about this, I think on Monday or Tuesday of this past week, and I read off of the discussion from the National Weather Service in Buffalo, they were actually making comparisons with the storm of 2000 or the lake effect of 2000 relative to what has just happened to them. And of course, also, we all remember, or at least those of us who are into weather remember, the massive snowfall that hit Buffalo in January of 1977. So, yeah, they come, I guess they come on this scale or this magnitude about once every 10 or 15 years. But when they do, boy, it slams the whole Buffalo region with tremendous snowfall. A friend of mine who lives out in eastern Long Island said yesterday to me, pinged me on Messenger and said, "How in the world could anybody even think about living in Buffalo?" It's and you got to. That's one of the things I guess you have to take into consideration if you're planning to move to that part of New York State. You have to consider days or periods like this where the whole area just gets paralyzed for a few days because of all the snow.
Yeah, it is. Well, Buffalo itself, the city, is a little different. The snow amounts, that are high, but they were kind of spread out a bit more. It's south and west of Buffalo uh, that gets clobbered. And like you said, this is a once in a 10-year event. I will point out to snow lovers that watch this show, and we have so many of those, that these sorts of lake effect events do not happen or seem not to happen in uh, in general winters that are uneventful in the Northeast and in the northern Mid Atlantic states. So you can look at this and say, you know what, this might be a good sign for snow events this coming winter for much of the Northeast for the Northeast and Mid Atlantic. I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking at it too.
Yeah, and I was also looking last night about the funny thing is this is our third consecutive La Nina winter. The last two were also La Nina winters, and yet there's some differences. I mean, for example, um, and it's interesting to point out that we have not seen, for example, such low snow amounts in 2 or more consecutive years in the month of January, and also March. The last 2 years, March has had just a trace of snow. I look back, Joe, over all of the snow records from Central Park. There has never been more than 2 consecutive years with just a trace of snow in March. It kind of makes you wonder whether or not we're going to see a trace again for an unusual third consecutive year, whether or not this will be the March where everything busts open and we get a tremendous amount of snowfall. And they're not really comparable the last 2 years. Remember that the year before last, we had like 5 inches of snow in Central Park. Last year, another La Nina year, we had like 38. So, if you're looking to make comparisons and similarities, I really don't think you can do that as far as trying to anticipate what we may see this year. Maybe we'll see another year where we'll have a paucity of snow like we did 2 years ago, or maybe, just maybe, we'll have an above normal year like last year where we may hit 35, 40, or maybe even more than 40 inches of snow.
Yeah, and you have to laugh because that's 40 inches of snow over 4 months. You've got places in Western New York that probably got 40 inches in about 4 hours. you know,
Right.
so
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and speaking of which, just been following the Buffalo. By the way, there are no new snow amounts that have been issued by the Buffalo office since yesterday. There was a small statement that came out around 2 a.m. that only had 3 observations on it, so we don't really know um, how much more they had, although there wasn't a whole lot that really went on in that part of New York late yesterday and last night. Meanwhile, you can see on the snowfall forecast map out of Buffalo that from earlier today. Now, this was issued, sorry about that, this was issued at 4 a.m., so some of this may have already happened. Some of this is yet to happen because there's one more trough that's moving through that's causing this. But you could see the snow amounts were an additional 8 to 12 for Pulaski and 8 to 12 for High Market, Fulton 18 to 24. The thing is the distance. Syracuse, if you look on the map, is the red roadways that make what looks like the shape of a house. That's where Syracuse is,
Right.
and it's not a far drive up to
I
Pulaski
I
at
80
all
I
on
81. Yeah.
81.
Yeah.
So
I did a radio station for several years, WRHP in Syracuse, and we often used to talk about this, where the city proper was out of it, so to speak. But I said, if any of you are contemplating a trip to the north on 81 up toward Pulaski or toward Watertown or whatever, you better bring your snow shovel because easily they would get like 1, 2, 3 feet of snow. It's amazing, Joe, how this happens, where you're literally in a place where you're seemingly protected by some invisible glass dome from all of the snow, and you all you have to do is just go a stone's throw either to the north or to the west, and boom, you're immediately buried up to your waist in heavy snow. But that's the way the lake effect snow game works up in western New York and northwestern Pennsylvania.
yep, and this is from the Weather Service in Cleveland. Now I pulled this map up this morning because this person was up at 5 a.m. today, so I saw the old map from overnight. So there was some snow there overnight in this zone from Cleveland east to Erie. Most of those amounts. Now this is again, this is as of 7. This was issued at 7 a.m. So some of this has probably already been put down. We're going to see, an additional few inches, some places a little bit more. But we are, at the very least, we certainly could say we are at the tail end of all of this. And here's the latest radar. And yeah, there's a patch of snow in southwestern New York. There is a patch of snow that's coming in between Cleveland and Erie at the moment. But these look like the last bands, really, as this last upper trough moves on through. And then right through Lake Ontario, going from west to east. Remember, those winds now are more westerly, and that is favoring the snows up in north central New York. It looks like from the radar echoes that the snow is just barely to the north on the north side of Syracuse. But those bands coming in, and they will play through, and then All of this will be over with. By the way, there were some snow squalls earlier in South Central New York in a band that was heading for the Catskills. I'm just wondering if Chuck Cardillo's on the board, whether he got into those earlier this morning. And there's some light stuff well north and west of 84 up into Sullivan County. Also into northeastern Pennsylvania. We're seeing just some light echoes there, some light snow showers going on in parts of northern New England, and also back in and around the Great Lakes. They also, by the way, the western shores of Michigan also had some substantial lake effect snows measured in feet over the last 3 or 4 days. So there was a lot of places that deal with lake effect had ideal the ideal wind directions to produce what it's turned out to be something they will definitely be writing about in the coming years when they write the history of this sort of stuff.
By the way, did you get a chance to? It was on NBC, I believe, yesterday afternoon. There was a college football game, Boston College versus Notre Dame. They were playing in South Bend, Indiana. And I checked the radar, Joe, and they had classic lake effect for the South Bend area. And indeed, if you watch that game, the entire field was covered in snow. And it was snowing at a light to moderate pace around the end of the third quarter, the beginning of the fourth quarter. And I guess Notre Dame, the players who play for Notre Dame are used to this kind of weather. I noted to Renata that most of the players on Notre Dame were not wearing sleeves. I mean, or not wearing undershirts underneath the uniform. Meanwhile, the poor players from Boston College were all bundled up. They had long sleeves on, and maybe that was why Notre Dame is used to playing in those kind of conditions. Final score: Notre Dame 44, Boston College 0. And again, the whole field covered. I said, how in the world can they see the hash marks? How in the world can they see the yardage lines with the field covered the way it was? But it warmed the cockles of my heart, because I said I was looking forward to seeing the game in Buffalo until they moved it to Detroit. And I said, oh, darn it, now I'm not going to see a football game where the snow is falling and the field is covered. I got my wish yesterday, though, seeing that college football game between Boston College and Notre Dame. And again, lake effect, that's all it was, lake effect that brought all of that snow to South Bend yesterday. It wasn't a blip. I mean, it wasn't one of those paralyzing, crippling snowfalls. I'm sure it was maybe only he said maybe 4, 5, 6, 8 inches, but it still was enough to make for a very interesting scene if you were watching that game yesterday on your TV dial.
Yeah, nobody has a TV dial anymore, Joe. You got to remember that.
Actually, I have a television in the other room.
Oh, you have a flip phone with a rotary dial, for God's sake.
No, but it was a television where if you have VHS cassette tapes, you can stick it right underneath the screen, and the thing would take it right there, and you could watch your VHS tapes, which nobody can do anymore because nobody has players that you can watch a VHS tape on. But that TV, it has, I believe, it has a dial. So living in the past, Joe.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, Noah Harley, who was on the chat board late last week and watching the show, was mentioning that he was going to go up and try to get some pictures of all of this in Western New York. And I reached out to him, and he was very kind to post some pictures and some videos. And this is in Attica, New York. Now, I'm taking this off his Facebook page because it was difficult for him to send everything to me. So, Noah, thank you very much. And as I said to Noah in an email, do not put your life at risk for this stuff, okay? It was, make sure you're cautious. But he did get some nice photographs here. Again, this is in Attica, New York, in southwestern New York. We've got a shot here of what looks like a yardstick when it was I can't read what the number is. That looks like 24. So it looks like it's up to 2 feet, but I can't really read the measuring stick very clearly. But you can see that there. You can see the cars. This particular car was um, covered with snow, as was the driveway.
Good. Yeah.
And
Good.
there is
Okay, here we
Noah.
go.
I don't know if you can hear it, but no,
And he's gone.
he's gone.
Oh God!
Good. Yeah. Good.
Look at
Okay, here we
this.
go.
Oh dear.
And he's gone.
Well, you know, if you love it,
Okay, you're good.
yeah, I'm sure he's in his element right now, or at least he was when he made this video.
And here's one where you can see how hard it was. I mean, you got the heavy snow coming down. I mean, this is something.
Ooh, yeah.
Now, was he able to get out of there, or was he able to? Oh,
I-
yes, thumbs up, thumbs up.
I don't know. Are you able to hear the sound?
I don't hear any sound.
Okay, I can hear the sound in my headsets.
Yeah.
But Noah, thank you so much for posting these on Facebook, and yeah, I think I said to you last week, I still would like to go one day and experience it, but I still also have that feeling that after about 4 or 5 inches on the ground, I'd start to get the idea that, maybe this was probably not a good idea, not a good idea to do.
Well, you just have to put it into your mind that you're going to stay there until the end and beyond, just like your Christmas tree, which for so many months was out of date because it just sat there. Now it's suddenly back in date again. Now it's okay to have a Christmas tree up behind you.
It goes to show that I had the wherewithal and the forethought of decorating early.
Yeah, we have a new Christmas tree that's going to be delivered sometime later this week, and it has LED lights already on it. And
Yeah.
but it just I mean, it looks unless we can cover it with a lot of decoration, but it looks like when we saw it in the store, artificial. I mean, the tree that we had for all these years was artificial, 20 years, but nobody could tell. I mean, it really looked like a real tree.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll be able to get used to this new tree. But actually, you know what, Joe? And my wife said, absolutely, positively not. I said, I'd like to have the kind of tree that I grew up with as a young boy. And my grandparents had this tree, one of those aluminum Christmas trees that changed 4 different colors with the giant color wheel.
Oh, I hated those. Oh,
You didn't like that?
No, those were like so 60s. Oh, no.
I'd love to. And we had red balls. That's all we had was red balls. You couldn't put any real lights on the aluminum tree because of the chance of getting it short-circuited or starting a fire and thing. But it was just a plain aluminum tree with red balls, a red star at the top, and it changed to orange, green, blue, and I think red. It was,
So
it was one of,
that whole concept was just wrong. It was just wrong. It was not for me anyway. It was definitely not my thing.
mentioned, of course, in a Charlie Brown Christmas when Lucy said, yeah, we should get a Christmas tree, a nice, tall aluminum Christmas tree. And I said, well, we got one.
Yeah, definitely wasn't my thing. All right, check out the let me check out here so you could see what's on the screen without my
And we did have, you could see, in fact, the line that came on through last night, moving off of Cape Cod and on toward Nova Scotia.
Yes.
That line was over us last night around 1 a.m. And right after I finished watching the second half of the Honeymooners Hour on Channel 11, I headed on downstairs and looked out the window and then checked radar. And purportedly, it was snowing at my house, but I guess the snow wasn't reaching the ground, although it was probably reaching the ground in other places further to the north. But that was, I guess, a front, Joe, which has turned the winds now into a straight westerly direction. And those winds later this afternoon, probably mid and late afternoon, will be blowing at speeds in excess of 30 or even 35 miles per hour in gusts. And that's also why I guess the the snows in and around the Buffalo area have, for the most part, subsided or at least significantly diminished, because instead of that constant, ongoing southwesterly wind across Lake Erie into the Buffalo area, now the winds have turned more out of a west or even a west-northwest direction, again, behind that front, which, as again, you can see that band of white moving offshore from Cape Cod and on toward Atlantic Canada. That came through last night, changed the wind direction a bit, and now we're into a cold. I mean, tonight will be the coldest night of the new season so far. Temperatures in some locations in the Hudson Valley will be in the low 20s and upper teens tonight, with wind chill values probably down in the low teens and single digits. It's going to be a cold night tonight, Joe.
Yeah, the teens and single digits. Certainly, this is a cold Sunday, and then maybe some slight moderation will begin on Monday. While further south, by the way, I mean, you can see down along most coastal areas now it's partly to mostly sunny, but then you get it down into North Carolina and point southward, a lot of high and middle clouds that are streaming up from the southwest from an old frontal boundary. I'm actually on the edge of those clouds. I've got some sunshine here, but got to 20 because we had a little bit of cloud cover overnight, so only got down to 28, I think, this morning, or 27. And the last I checked, just before we started the show, it was 35 here. It's just, by the way, for the last month here, the last month or maybe 5-6 weeks, and I've talked to locals about this. This is as cold as they've ever experienced during this early.
Right.
Here in North Georgia, and you can see there's a lot of Gulf moisture running off the Louisiana coast and in the Western Gulf, and also the Northeast Gulf. There's some rain down in that vicinity, and also seeing clouds in South Texas and back over to Southwest Texas. But most of the country is actually enjoying some fairly tranquil conditions. There's more cloud cover up in the northern Rockies, a system that's off the Pacific Northwest. We'll just give you let's get a wide radar view here, at least from the standpoint of precipitation. You can see rains here in Florida, but only aloft in South Georgia and along the Carolina coast. Off into the Northeast Gulf, we've got some rain, a little bit of shower activity in South Texas. In Central Texas, there's some heavier downpours and a couple of thunderstorms in the mix there, but the rest of the country is doing okay. WPC in their forecast here. So I'm going to go to we'll just jump over to day 5. So day 5 is Thursday into Friday. So Thursday morning, 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. Friday. And there's less than anywhere from 1/100th to 1/10th of an inch being indicated by WPC up into southern New York and into Connecticut, and some 1/10 inch amounts in coastal North Carolina. The day side for Thanksgiving, and I think even into the night, will probably be fine. I mean, most of the rain that we're talking about here for Eastern PA to Southern New England would probably be closer to Friday morning than it would be, say, for Thursday evening. So I think if you've got, and certainly if you're traveling this week, you really couldn't have asked for much better travel weather, unless your destination is up in Western New York. But if you're going elsewhere, there are no major storms around, so you should be able to come and go as you please. You're just going to be subjected to the huge traffic of people that are going to be trying to fly out. Now, on the probability of snow, really it's just confined in and around the lakes and in the Northwest. Otherwise, the rest of the country is quiet. I did want to at least point out, and I'm just going to see if they updated this today. May not have. No, this was put out around midnight last night. They do have for Saturday, on the long range probability, I like to round it. I don't know why they decided on this. Why couldn't they just say 0.30, 3 inches, but let's just say it's the probability of at least 2.5 inches of snow and sleet. And this is what WPC is showing. So in the light green, in upstate New York, the Catskills northward, the western Massachusetts northward, southwest New York, northwest PA, 10 to 30% probability. The darker greens are 30 to 50%, and that's way up in the Adirondacks and also northeastern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and the northern half of Maine with a 50 to 70% probability being indicated there for northwestern Maine. So not really a whole lot of winter weather going on other than what we're seeing in the Great Lakes. So on that note, I don't know if you've been following the models, Joe, over the weekend. The GFS seems to be in some weird place. I couldn't really make any heads or tails of it from run to run. The European's been more consistent. And I've also noticed, by the way, that, and this has been going on for the better part of a week now, but there's all kinds, I think there's all kinds of tropical feedback. It got the GFS on one model run, I think it was Thursday, had a had a category 4, almost category 5 hurricane going into Cuba in the long range. And I mean, and then the Canadian had not quite that extreme, but it had a hurricane I noticed yesterday going into Cuba in its long range, which was somewhere between 7 and 10 days. And I just wonder whether there's some sort of feedback that may be going on with the models making these tropical systems. They tend to screw up everything else that's happening. The European has been very clean through all of this and relatively consistent. So I'm going to kind of lean in that direction with what the European has. I have the GFS up on the screen, the new GFS. So as we take it along, and I'm only looking at this for the first time.
Maybe this is all feedback from Uncle Alberto's thoughts about Lucy.
Yeah. Well, we've got the core of the cold air has moved in now in the northeast and mid-Atlantic states. And the high is in West Virginia. You can see the streaks of lake effect still going on, but the model tends to thin those out as we go through tonight and Monday. The high moves to the Delaware coast. The winds start to back a little more west-southwest tomorrow, but there's another front, Joe. There's a weak front and another upper trough that swings through eastern Canada. That's not going to really do very much. All that really does, I think, is just kind of slow the moderating trend a bit. But we are going to see temperatures probably start to bounce up a little higher on Tuesday. There's a low that forms off the southeast coast on Tuesday that moves out and is of no concern here. Wednesday looks great everywhere from the plains to through the east coast. This is Wednesday evening. I mean, if you're flying to Florida, if you're flying to Texas, if you're flying to Chicago, if you're flying to Cleveland, if you're driving anywhere, you couldn't ask for a better getaway day for Thanksgiving.
Right. And we have known over the years getaway days and Thanksgiving days that have been quite the contrary to what we're going to be seeing this year. And a few of them stand out. The Thanksgiving in 1971, the only Thanksgiving where the balloons were unable to fly. And, of course, 1989, anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of snow greeting everybody on Thanksgiving morning. But nothing like that this year. I think somebody on the chat board, when we were getting our show started, said, obviously, this person is not watching the Joe and Joe show because this person was hearing from somebody at a store yesterday that, we're going to have a snowy Thanksgiving. No, that's not going to be the case, at least not this year.
No, but the European did show overnight a rather strong storm offshore. There's just no cold air. If you think back to the model runs we had last week that had this big high pressing down, well, that quote big high is now a smallish high in Quebec that really doesn't have much cold air with it. So we were talking earlier last week about the fact that we were going to see some blocking, and the issue was going to be, was the blocking going to be not enough, or was it going to be potentially too much blocking? And in this case, it turned out that it was going to be not enough. And,
right.
And by the way, the blocking nature does support the idea that there could be a pretty strong storm that develops here. The GFS seems to be now more in line with the European. It develops a low. It's got a 9. Is that? I can't read. I need to. My glasses, I even cleaned them. It's a 98 low near Atlanta on Friday. This is Friday afternoon. So if you believe this, it the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states probably would get at least through the first part of Friday without much issue. Maybe even a good chunk of the day side. That low, Joe, goes to a 93 low in North Carolina, and then early Saturday morning is an 87 low in Northern Virginia. And look at that. It's got snow in Western Virginia, the Carolina Mountains. And to me, it's got snow come early Saturday morning. Also went to southeastern Kentucky and northern Tennessee. We
Right.
could only hope here. That's because there's an upper low that's probably a cutoff low that's moving along. Then we get to a 77 low near Hagerstown and a 971 low Saturday afternoon with a million isobars wrapped around it right over New
Wow.
York City. Look at that.
I mean, what kind of winds are we expecting? That that to me looks like winds sustained at 30 to 40 miles an hour.
Along with some pretty heavy rain, if this is the case, Friday night and Saturday. Look at the gradient behind it. I mean, it's when the low goes by, it's going to be howling from the northwest.
Right. My son and daughter-in-law are going to have Thanksgiving at my daughter-in-law's parents' house out in eastern Long Island, and they're supposed to come back later Saturday or Saturday evening. So I better alert them to the fact that coming back may not be so much fun as to going there, no problem, but coming back may be an issue. Maybe they ought to stay through into Sunday at least with all the bad weather that's there. But of course, Joe, we're looking at frogs that are
Next
5
week.
and 6 and 7 days out, and of course things can change obviously in the overview in the mid and long term. So we'll see how this all pans out in the days to come. But one thing I think you can rest assured on, all of you who are watching, no problems for Getaway Day Wednesday and Thanksgiving Thursday. Beyond that, still some issues. We'll try to at best to ferret them out for you in the next few days.
Yeah, I'm looking at the upper air here, just from the standpoint of what's different from what we saw on some runs early last week, when there was some looks that suggested that there would be cold air bleeding down starting Thursday and becoming an issue. Is it blocky? Yes. Sitting the Scandinavian block to Greenland, but that's not enough. And instead of building that block into northeastern Canada, which was what was being indicated, instead it doesn't do that. And you've got the trough in the east that is pulling out now. That's our trough now. There was going to be some troughing lagging behind. You see the upper low in Hudson Bay on Tuesday. Well, instead, that just pulls out, and that goes east of Newfoundland, gets to the almost to the 50-50 position. But there's we don't have that. The block is trying to build down, but it's not enough. It's just not enough. And the next trough just digs like an animal here into the plains and dives down into the Ohio Valley. You got this massive wrapped up cutoff that lifts up to the northeast. That's a pretty strong storm that the model's generating here with the upper air supporting it. Now the question is how much is this going to adjust? And if we look at the European from last night, it was kind of on this similar idea with a digging system and wrapping it up. You can see the trough that dives into the east, not quite as deep as the GFS, but it still has a pretty sharp trough and a low that closes off just east of New Jersey come early Saturday morning, and then heading on up into New England from there.
And the funny thing is, sometimes the models, you look at something on the long range and it shows, let's say, blocking, and then the mid range, all of a sudden the block is gone. And you say, oh, well, that's not going to happen again. And then suddenly, when you get within a couple of days of the actual event, the block returns. Yeah. I mean, it loses it in the mid range and then brings it back, later when you get closer. So maybe we'll actually see the block, strengthen again or return or become more prolific again once we're within 2 or 3 days of Thanksgiving or the end of the week.
I just don't think it's going to get to any kind of a point like we saw in some of the models from last week, where it had an ample amount of cold air bleeding all the way south, and that just it doesn't seem to me like this is going to be a situation where that happens this time around anyway.
Could be, may not. We'll see. And you're probably right. You're probably. I mean,
you might, Rabbit. You might.
You're right. Yes.
Yeah, I just think we're a week away. We're less than a week away from here. This is Sunday. We're talking about Friday night, Saturday. It's not that far off. I can't imagine it would change much, if anything. But look, if the GFS is right, make no mistake, that's going to be that's going to be a very interesting wind and rain event. No question of that. If that's correct.
Yeah. Some years it's not necessarily Thanksgiving or Getaway Day Wednesday that is memorable in terms of weather. Some years it's what happens after Thanksgiving or toward the end of the Thanksgiving weekend. This potential looks like it will be affecting us in the middle of the weekend. That would be for Friday night into a good part of Saturday. And if it works out, Sunday, which is the day when everybody will be heading back from Grandma's house and getting ready to start a new week in the aftermath of the big holiday, will hopefully be a good travel day, just as Wednesday will be a good travel day, or even Thursday morning.
So, Leon Probitsky hitting super chat tip jar today on the Sunday morning. Thank you, Leon. Most appreciated. Big hellos to everybody on the chat board. Still thinking about all that snow in Western New York. So I'm hosting Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
And for those of you who are on my Facebook page, I posted what I started doing for Thanksgiving, because I have I got to do everything food wise. So on that note, let me just show you two of the things that I've been doing. Hang on a second here. Let me just stop this video for a moment. Let's get this on the screen here. This is what I am preparing, or what I've prepared today. So in that pot, Joe, in that tall pot that is up there on the screen, that is a red wine brine that I'm going to brine my turkey in. I have a huge bucket that I bought just for brining purposes at Home Depot. They use it to put paint in.
Yeah.
These big orange buckets.
Yes.
I mean, they're huge. So that's perfect to brine a turkey in. So there won't be any paint in there, just so to be clear. So in that frying pan, and by the way, you can see my cast iron skillet there, which is, like, it's very dear to me. But in my other frying pan, I have chopped onions, chopped carrots, chopped celery, cooking in chicken broth with some butter, and that is part of my cornbread sausage pecan stuffing. And I put that all together, and that's in the fridge. So now that's all prepared. I did the sausage in the air fryer, so that's done. And I put the video in motion. And then the other thing I did today is I'm making 2 loaves of Italian bread. Let me get that up for you. So just hang on one second. Oh.
And for those of you who are just joining us, no, you have not accidentally switched to the Food Channel.
Right.
Which is not really the Food Channel anymore, because all they have on the Food Channel, Joe, are competitions.
Oh, I know. I can't stand it.
So annoyed. You'd go to the Food Channel to get tips on how to make certain things, certain delectable delights. And now all it is that it's this one guy, I forget his name. He has this gray beard.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't watch him.
He's constantly on the Food Channel, and he has these shows where you have to outcook him or you have to beat him in certain competitions or whatever. And I'm fed up with this. I mean, again, it's to me, a Food Channel is supposed to have cooking shows. You'd be perfect for a cooking show.
Well, thank you. Well, I started with one of the first ones that I do watch it from time to time is Chopped. I like Chopped. They get the chefs and they got to cook they have to cook the appetizer, the entree, and the dessert, and they eliminate them as they go along. That one I enjoy. But I can only watch one of those things, and then I'm done. So since they're not doing food, I'm doing food. So the other thing I'm doing, Joe, is I'm baking 2 loaves of Italian bread from scratch. So I made the dough today for that because it needs to rise and then proof, which takes about 72 hours. So this is 8 cups of flour, 4 packages of rapid rise yeast, 3 cups of water, a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, an eighth of a cup of kosher salt, and roughly about an eighth to a quarter of a cup of extra virgin olive oil. And then you knead the dough, and you brush the pan with olive oil. You put the dough in, you knead it into a bowl. You put the dough in the pan, cover the pan, and then it goes in a dark place. And I let it rise. You could do this and just let it rise for a couple of hours, but I actually let it rise overnight, and then I'm going to put it in the fridge and save it for Thursday morning when I'm going to bake it in my clay pot Dutch oven that I have.
Well, you're all set, I guess. How many pounds is your turkey?
18.
That's good. And you're going to have what? 9 people?
Yes.
Okay, so you got 2 pounds per person.
Oh, and the brine, by the way, that I'm making is the last ingredient to the brine, which I'm not going to add until I put the turkey in the pail and the brine in the pail, is a bottle of red wine. So it's a red wine brine.
That sounds delectable.
And in the brine itself, there's brown sugar, there's apples in it, there's rosemary. But she was a little obstinate. She didn't want to get in the hot water. Rosemary, sage, fresh-grown sage, because I grow it here in my house. And the thing is, I'm like, I got it done. That was the primary thing in my head. It's like I need to get this done. I can't be doing all this Wednesday and Thursday. So I did it now and got it over with. So I'm a happy camper. And Brandon Doherty hitting the tip jar, the super chat tip jar. Thank you, Brandon. Most appreciated as always. Appreciate your generosity.
We went to BJ's, Renata and I, last week, and we picked up. I guess she had a special situation with BJ's, so she was able to get 2, not 1, but 2 turkeys, which now reside in our refrigerator. And but we'll take one of them out, and
I have 3.
You have 3.
3.
Remember that there was a Cool Whip commercial where they showed all the delectables that Grandma was preparing for Thanksgiving. In the background, you hear over the river and through the wood. And I remember the end of that commercial. The grandma turns to somebody that, George, you bring out the first turkey.
Right. Well, they were on sale. So it was one of these deals where at the local supermarket that if you spent $35, you could get the turkey for 48 cents a pound. So I found a 16-pound turkey for 48 cents a pound, so it roughly cost me about $7 for the turkey. And getting $35 of groceries was pretty easy. I got a dozen eggs and a glass of milk, and I was already there. So, so that was that. And the other one I got was 98 cents a pound, which I didn't have to spend a minimum for. What I do is I have a separate freezer that I had to buy when I lost my refrigerator and had to wait 3 weeks to get a new one. So I did this last year too. I always like to buy at least 1 extra turkey so that sometime during the winter on a really cold day, if I've got if my kids are coming over, or if I got my grandson's coming over, I can take the turkey out then and roast it a second time. So it all gets eaten at the end of the day, so I'm not too concerned about it sitting in the freezer for too long.
Remember when we were gainfully employed at Cablevision, which doesn't exist anymore now? It's a whole new company. But at Thanksgiving, they used to give out to all employees, and even the interns. And you were a full employee there. I was only just a stringer, but even the stringers got a free turkey and a bottle of wine for Thanksgiving.
Nice.
That was a classy organization back then. Don't ask me now what that organization is like. And but back in the good old days, you were always guaranteed a turkey at Cablevision, be it on the screen or off the screen.
Yes, correct. All right, so look, let's wrap it up because it's almost noontime. I have to take JJ to the park, which I haven't done today, so I'm going to take him to the park, and we will be back. Joe and I will be back tomorrow at 7:35 Eastern Time. So enjoy your Sunday, Mr. Rayo.
You too.
And go Giants. Go Giants.
Go Giants. Go Jets. Jets are going to try to do something they haven't done in a long time, beat the New England Patriots. So I've already been stunned by the way the Giants and Jets have been playing this year. I'll be on the floor near heart attack conditions if the Jets win this afternoon. We'll see.
All right, pal. So have a great rest of your day, everybody. Enjoy, and we'll see you tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern. Ta-ta.
Ta-ta. Ta-ta.